It all started when I was 18. Life at home wasn't easy. My parents had always had a special place in their hearts for my younger brother, Jake, and I was always left to fend for myself. It wasn't like they didn't care, it's just that they didn't know how to show it. And I guess over time I stopped caring too. My parents often had arguments about money, about Jake's education, about everything really. But when it came to me, I felt like an afterthought. A kid who never seemed to matter as much as the golden boy, Jake. As the years went on, I worked harder and harder to prove myself, to be something, anything. But it never seemed to be enough. Day after another fight at the dinner table, things took a turn. I'd come home after a long day of work, at a part-time job I took just to pay for my own expenses, only to be met with the worst news of my life. "You're out of here," my father said, his voice cold. My mother stood beside him, tears in her eyes, but she said nothing. It was like she was too exhausted to fight anymore. "What? You're kicking me out?" I asked, my voice shaking, but not from fear, from anger. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't a decision made after any conversation or reasoning. It was as if they had just decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Jake, standing in the doorway, didn't even say a word. He didn't have to. It was clear that he had no intention of supporting me. He was the one they had invested in, the one they thought would make something of himself. They didn't care if I was struggling. If anything, I was in the way. I packed my bags that night. I didn't fight, I didn't plead. There was no point. I walked out of that house, the house that had once been my home, and never looked back. The first few months were the hardest. I bounced between friends' couches, shelters, and even spent a couple of nights sleeping in my car. I didn't have much in terms of support. All I had was my determination to prove them wrong. I started from the ground up. I found a steady job at a coffee shop, barely scraping by. But I didn't stop. I worked overtime when I could, took on side gigs, and slowly but surely, my situation started to improve. It was tough, grueling work, but I had something to prove now. Every shift, every dollar earned, felt like a small victory. One thing I learned quickly was that no one cared about your struggles. If you didn't make it, you were just another failure. But I wasn't going to be a failure. I started an online business in my spare time, doing things I loved: graphic design, social media marketing, and consulting for small businesses. It wasn't much at first, but it was enough for me to keep going. Years passed. I worked relentlessly. Slowly, my business grew, and so did my reputation. I built up a network of clients, and my income went from modest to impressive. I moved into my own apartment in a nicer part of the city, bought a decent car, and started traveling. The dream of success was no longer just a dream, it was my reality. One day, out of the blue, I got a call. It was my mother. "Hi, sweetheart," her voice was shaky. "We need to talk." My heart dropped. I hadn't heard from her in years, not since I left. There had been no phone calls, no apologies, no attempts to check in. But now, she wanted to talk. "What is it, Mum?" I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. She hesitated before saying, "Your father and we want you to come home. We need to fix things. We've been thinking a lot about what happened. We were wrong. We should have never kicked you out." I was stunned. A part of me wanted to hang up the phone right there, but another part of me wanted to hear more. I had been so angry at them for so long, for the way they had treated me, and now they were asking for forgiveness? "Why now?" I asked, my voice cold. "Why after all these years?" Her answer wasn't what I expected. "It's Jake," she said softly. "He's struggling. He's been having trouble with his business, and he's in a lot of debt. Your father and we don't know what to do. We need your help. You've always been the one who could fix things." I felt a rush of emotions. For so long I had been the one left out, the one who didn't matter, and now they were asking for my help. They were asking for the help of the person they had kicked out and ignored. It wasn't just about Jake, I knew that. They wanted me back because I was successful now, because I had what they didn't. The bitterness rose inside me like a wave, threatening to consume me. But I didn't give in. I wasn't the same person I had been before. "Mom," I said slowly, "I've worked hard to get to where I am. I've struggled, I've sacrificed, and I've done it all on my own. And now you want me to come back because I've made it? Because I'm the one who has everything you don't?" There was silence on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, but I'm not coming back to be your safety net, I continued, my voice unwavering. I've built a life for myself, and I'm not going to throw it all away to fix your mistakes. She tried to argue, but I had already made up my mind. I couldn't go back to that toxic environment, where I was treated like a second-class citizen, where my success would only be seen as a way to bail out their failures. I've changed, Mom. I'm not the person I was when I left. I've learned that I don't need anyone who doesn't appreciate me, I said, my words heavy with truth. I've learned to value myself, and I won't let you or anyone else take that away from me. When I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I was sad that things had turned out this way. I had always wanted to be accepted, to feel like I belonged, but I had realized something important over the years. I didn't need them to define me. I had created my own identity, and I wasn't going to let them take that from me. A week later, I received another call. This time it was from Jake. "Hey sis," he said, sounding defeated. "I've heard what happened with Mom and Dad. I know you're angry, but I need your help. I don't know where else to turn." I listened to him talk, and for the first time I felt sympathy. But I didn't offer him the solution he wanted. Instead, I said, "Jake, you've got to fix your own problems. I'm not going to be your crutch. You need to stand on your own 2 feet, just like I did." There was a long silence before he responded, "I get it. I guess I was hoping you would help me out. But I see where you're coming from. As much as I wanted to help him, I couldn't. He had to learn the hard lessons that I did. The lessons about self-reliance, about hard work, about not relying on others to fix your mess." I moved forward with my life, never looking back. I had learned that family didn't always mean unconditional love. It meant respect, understanding, and mutual support. And those things were earned, not given. In the end, I realized something. My family didn't need to be a part of my success for me to feel fulfilled. I had created a life for myself that was my own, and that was all I ever needed. Thank you for listening to my story. If you faced a similar situation, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How did you handle it? Leave a comment below, like, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss an update.